This week we're going to cover a little more complicated returns. We're going to get into your Schedule B's, C's, D's, and E's, get into more detail on the depreciation. We're going to go over how to add multiple items of depreciation on the tax return. And we're going to cover a few things that we went over last week also, such as like adding a form, your auto error check, your printing returns, all that. So like I was saying, the purpose of these webinars is to get you guys more comfortable with software. If you guys feel like you need more training or more help, we have our online training videos and our TRX software manual on our website at www.trxmembers.com. I really suggest you guys take a look at that manual. I've read through it, and I think it's really good. If you don't know the software, I can assure you by the time you read through that manual, you'll be caught up. And that's at trxmembers.com. We also have our support team, our technical support team, 8 a.m. Central to 9 p.m. Central at 866-829-9777. Okay. Let's see. Is everybody able to hear me? Okay. It seems like somebody isn't able to hear me. They might have not dialed into the teleconference number, but I'll just go ahead and remind them. I'm sorry? No, the audio's over the telephone. It's through the phone, yes, on the conference number that you can hear me now, can't you? Yes, that's how you're supposed to hear me. Okay. Okay, so back where I left off, I was talking about our technical support team. They're working until 9 o'clock Central Standard Time, starting at 8 Central, 8 a.m. The number is 866-829-9777. So if there's nothing we don't touch with our training videos, manuals, or webinars, definitely call that number for things like error messages and installation, performance, all that. Alright, so we're going to get started today with our more complicated tax returns. A few things we're going to cover today would be Schedule B, Schedule C, Schedule D, and Schedule E. Now we're not going to cover Schedule A today. We are still working on fixing those, some of the changes that are coming on the Schedule A. So we haven't released Schedule A yet. And again, that number for our support team is 866-829-9777 for somebody that's asking. Alright, so everybody should be able to see my screen now. We're on the home page here. Also, forgot to mention, if you guys have any questions throughout the webinar, feel free to chat the message, chat the question under the message in the eBoulevard Meeting Manager. Include your email address at the end of the question in case I can't get back to it, but I'll be checking it periodically, and at the end of my demonstration we'll go back and answer the questions you have. I'll repeat them for everybody, and yeah, we'll go ahead and talk about that. Alright, so everybody should see my screen now. This screen should be familiar to most of you guys now. This is our home page. It's got your shortcuts on here, such as opening up a new return, opening an existing return, your user return maintenance, where you will move and delete returns, print returns, send your e-files, access to your training videos and manual that I talked about, upload and download returns between offices, including our office here, download updates, software updates, registering your software, your online cloud e-file center, where you'll print checks, get acknowledgments, send returns, after the fact payroll for our premium members, and a quick tax refund estimator. Going across the top, you have your usual shortcuts like new return, open return, save, print, calculator, close return, after the fact payroll, tax estimator, unlock return, cloud EFC, and the appointment scheduler. Now some of these are grayed out because we haven't unlocked all the features for the tax season yet, so keep that in mind. So let's go ahead and start with a new return. We're going to press new return here on the home screen. First, you're going to choose whether it's individual module or business module between 1040 or 1065 or 1120. We're going to stick with the individual module today. Enter our social security number. Filing status. Alright, and last week we covered interview mode, and I'm just going to go ahead and show you guys that real quick in case you haven't seen it. Interview mode is for your support staff. It's really basically just data entry. It's for EIC clients, so that, let's say you have 10 people in your lobby waiting on you. If you have somebody working the front, they can enter in their basic information, the taxpayer's basic information, under the interview mode, so that by the time they get back to your desk, to your office, you'll have that information already pulled up because somebody already entered it. And that's what interview mode is mainly for. It covers basic information, personal information, dependents, EIC, due diligence, W-2s, prepare information, refund options, and some extra filing information. As a tax preparer, normally you wouldn't work under interview mode. You're going to work under input mode, is what I'm bringing up right now. Input mode is going to be more hands-on with the tax return. It's meant for seasoned tax preparers. If you notice here in the very middle of the screen is going to be your form that you're currently looking at. The left-hand side is your forms tree. It's going to list all the forms associated with this return. Now let's say we're looking at the 1040 and we want to take a look at the actual 1040 as it's being prepared. If we press this button here at the top, Form Peek, on the right-hand side will open up a view of the actual form you're looking at, and a lot of you guys like that there. But for now, we're going to keep that closed. Going across the top, we have our shortcuts up here still. Our interview mode, we can jump back to that. We can switch to Spanish, save the return, print the form that we're looking at, open up a calculator, our auto error check, which will open up later in tonight's webinar. Add a form, remove a form, close the return, open up your quick tax estimator, that Form Peek I just showed you guys, unlock the return, Cloud eFile Center, and our appointment scheduler. Alright, so let's go ahead and start with the first form here on the left hand side, which is our client information sheet. Okay, before I get started, one thing I want to point out is notice how some of the forms here on the left hand side have a red icon next to the left of the name of the form. The red means that there are red fields on the form itself that need to be cleared up. Red fields don't necessarily cause the return to be rejected or anything like that. They're just kind of red flags, but usually they're pretty important. So here on the client information sheet, we have some red fields for spouse information. So I'm going to go ahead and just fill out this information real quick. Now this relationship drop-down box, it's a glitch in our software that we do know about. So right now it's not letting me select that, so that's going to stay red. That should be fixed real soon though. Alright, let's go on to our next form since we can't enter that information. Return information sheet is our second form down. We're going to choose the type of return we're preparing. We'll say federal and state and e-file. Now to add a state, there's a button right here to the right hand side, add remove state. We press that button, it'll bring up our state selection screen. If you have any states downloaded, which we don't in the software right now, it'll appear in this list right up here at the top. The right hand side means full year, non-year resident, and part year resident. Let's say we had New York and California listed here. You'll see these states listed, and we'll put a checkbox next to the residency status and then press the add button. That'll add it to the state list here on the bottom. And then when you go to add form, you'll be able to choose your state forms here under this tab. Also, you have the state selection screen under the add form button right here. Brings up the same screen. Back to the return information sheet though. We're going to go ahead and finish filling this out. Under the prepare information, what I did there was all I had to do is type the number 1 in. When I pressed the number 1, it remembered all the information I typed in last time under the number 1. So let's say I typed in the number 2 here. I haven't used number 2 yet, so everything below it would be blank. But once I type information under this number, on these lines down here, and then the next time I come back in, I press 2, it'll remember everything I pressed under number 2. So it saves it kind of like an EIN database, which I'll show you guys once we open up a W2. So let's go ahead and jump to the 1040 now. Notice, however, on the return information sheet, the icon to the left of it's now blue. It used to be red. What happened was once we cleared out all those red fields, it turned blue. Alright, so now that we're looking at the 1040, a few things I want to point out. You'll notice different colored lines here. The yellow or beige lines you'll see are calculated lines, whereas the blue lines are manual entry lines. The difference in those two is a calculated line calculates from a different form and pulls the number to this line, whereas a blue line is a manual entry line and you can type numbers into that line. For example, line 8A, it allows me to type in numbers, whereas in 7 I'm not able to type anything. Okay, so what that means is line 7 pulls from another form. So what you want to do to have a line, have a number populate in line 7, you want to double click on line 7. If you double click on any line, it'll bring up a menu of what forms pull to this line. So if I double click line 7, it'll show a list of all the forms that can pull to line 7. So let's say we're going to add a W2. So we double clicked on line 7, we'll double click here. It'll ask us how many W2s we want to enter. We'll say 1 for now. It'll open up the W2, and notice how it adds it here on the left hand side under the forms tree. There are some states available to download right now. They're not fully finished though, but yeah, we're starting to release those as we go. I went and typed in the EIN number here, and it auto-populated the employer's name and address in that EIN database I was telling you guys about. Alright, so now that we got the W2 information entered, if we go back to the 1040, we'll notice that line 7 now has $25,000 pulled over. Like I was saying about line 7, it is a calculated field. We didn't type 25,000 here. It pulled from the W2. Let's say we had another W2. There's another way to add forms other than double clicking on that line. We can come to add form, which will bring up a list of all the forms in the 1040. We can scroll up and down and look for our form, or we can type in the form number here at the top. So we type in W2. It'll bring up the list of forms that begin with W2. Double click on it, we'll add another one. Notice how we have 2 copies of the W2 here on the left hand side of the forms tree. Alright, now we have another W2 for the spouse. If we go back to the 1040, it should total the 2 W2s, $25,000 in income and $22,000 in income, giving us $47,000 on line 7. Alright, so let's get into a few more schedules. We're going to get into Schedule B. If we want to go to Schedule B, we can double click on line 8. It'll ask us to link to Schedule B, or we can go to Add Form at the top, but we'll just go here this time. Alright, the way the Schedule B works is if you have multiple payers, we have an Add Statement button here. It's real simple. You can press it as many times as you want. It'll keep creating lines for different payers for different sources of interest. The red X on the right hand side will delete them out. We'll just say we have 1 today. Alright, then each column is something different. NAEOB is going to be for your nominee distribution amount, accrued interest amount, tax exempt amount, OID adjustment amount, ABP adjustment amount. So we would enter the code here, so say exempt amount, we'll say E, type in an amount. That 450 will now flow down to tax exempt amount, 450. We'll leave that blank though for now. We have federal tax withholding, U.S. government savings bonds, investment expense, whether it's a taxpayer or spouse or a joint, the state and the state withholding also here on the line. Part 2 ordinary dividends work the same way. We have the add statement button, remove a few of those. Say we have 400 in ordinary dividend, and let's say also another 400 in qualified dividends. Now if we come back to the 1040, we'll see the line 8A has $450 of taxable interest that we added at the top of Schedule B. And then we have the $400 of ordinary dividends and the $400 of qualified dividends that pulled over. Alright, so let's go ahead and get into the Schedule C now. We're going to double click on line 12, link to a Schedule C. Very top here, we're going to choose our business code first here on line B. Let's see, it used to have a drop down here. I think they might have edited that today. In the meantime, we'll just enter an amount. Under Part 1 income, we'll enter our income that we received. We'll give it some expenses here. And on line 13, if we need to depreciate on Schedule C, what we're going to do is we're going to double click on line 13 to add the 4562. Now just to note, the IRS isn't accepting any returns with the 4562 until later in the tax season. So you won't be able to send any returns off that have any depreciation at the beginning of tax season yet. Now if we double click on line 13, it's going to bring up that list to link certain forms. We're going to link the 4562. Whenever you try to add the 4562, it's going to ask you which parent form do you want to point it to. It can go to multiple forms, of course, but we want to go back to this Schedule C, copy number 1. Alright, a new feature we have built into the software this year for the 4562 is the Asset Depreciation Summary. The Asset Depreciation Summary is a place where you can enter all of your items for depreciation for that form, for that parent form Schedule C. One thing before I get into this screen is I want to point out on the left hand side, notice how the 4562 is directly beneath the Schedule C and it's tabbed in. That way we know it's linked back to Schedule C. See, if we saw the 4562 elsewhere, we'll know that it's not linked to it. And I'll show you guys that once we get into multiple 4562s. But on the Schedule C, I opened up the Asset Depreciation Summary by pressing this blue button on the 4562, and then it brought up this screen. Show you guys again. We're on the 4562, Asset Depreciation Summary. This is going to be where you list all of your items for depreciation for the Schedule C. You can add multiple rows just like adding a statement, and we can delete them by highlighting them and pressing the delete button down here. Alright, so what we're going to do is we're just going to go from left to right and enter our information. So we'll say we're depreciating some computers, date, place, and service. If it's a Schedule E, we'll skip that for now. Enter the cost minus our land value, prior year 179. Our business use is 100%. Depreciation class. Okay, our method, recovery life, and convention. Let's go on to the next item. And on this item, we'll say that we are taking the 179 deduction. Full amount, right here on line, on this column right here, current year 179. What we'll do is we'll press save. And all the amounts from that depreciation summary are created in a worksheet here on the left hand side. Under that 4562 tabbed in, we have depreciation worksheets. We have 2 worksheets here. One for each item we created. So one for the computers and one for the furniture. So if we look at the one for the computers, we scroll down. Line 12 will show us our current year depreciation and also our next year's depreciation. We go to the second worksheet for the furniture. Scroll down, line 12 doesn't have anything because we're taking the full 179 deduction here on line 5 under the 179 deduction expense. Now if we flow backwards, go back to the 4562, we'll see the 179 deduction here on line 12 of 2500 and our current depreciation for the computers of 350 here on line 19B for a total of our 2850 here on line 22 part 4 summary of the 4562. So this is the amount that should flow back to the Schedule C. Now if we go back, Schedule C 2850, there we go. Alright, so now let's go ahead and add a Schedule E to the return for rental properties. Come here, add a form. We can type it in. Now we have two copies of the Schedule E. Schedule E and Schedule E duplicate. If you have more than 3 properties, anything after that is going to go on a Schedule E duplicate. So let's just assume we're only working with one. If we had 4 properties, we'd have to add both of these forms. The first 3 would go on Schedule E, the 4th property would go on a Schedule E duplicate. And I'll go ahead and show you guys that form. Schedule E duplicate looks just like the regular Schedule E. So over here in the forms tree on the left hand side, we have Schedule E and a Schedule E duplicate here. They pretty much look identical. So let's work off the Schedule E first. We're going to go ahead and just fill out this information here. Okay, it's real basic information. We have columns A, B, and C for the first 3 properties. Property A will say that we had $8,000 of rent received. Give it some expenses. And then let's say we need to depreciate on this item, or on this rental property. We come down here to 18. Now this is where it gets tricky in this software. Whenever you have multiple 4562s, we have to make sure that the 4562s link correctly. See, if we come here to line 18 and double click, it's going to ask us to link to a 4562. But if we click on this one right here, this 4562 is our old 4562. The reason I know that is because it doesn't say new next to it under the description, and it's blue here also. So if I were to double click here, you would think it's linking to a new 4562, but it's linking to the old 4562. So whenever I double clicked on line 18 of the Schedule E and asked it to link to the 4562, I'm going to go ahead and do it again. Notice how here on the left hand side it brings me to the old 4562, which is linked to the Schedule C. So it's a common mistake to assume that it's going to flow back to the Schedule E because we linked it from line 18 of the Schedule E. But if we look here, it's linked to the Schedule C, and it already has our old Schedule C information. So if we were to pretend like this was linked to the Schedule E and we added new items, it's not going to flow back to the Schedule E. It's going to go to the Schedule C. So what you want to do is, if you have multiple 4562s on the return, the second 4562 needs to be added manually by coming to add a form and then typing 4562. Now when we try to add the 4562 by itself, this is what we want. The 4562 says, when we try to add it, it says which parent form do we want to connect it to. We have the option to link it back to the Schedule C or the Schedule E or a brand new form, Schedule F maybe. But we're going to link it back to the Schedule E. So if I double click here, and we look back here in the forms tree on the left hand side, this 4562 is underneath the Schedule E and tabbed in, and that's how we know this Schedule E is linked to this 4562 or vice versa. Also, this 4562 is blank. So guys, keep that in mind. We have two 4562s on here. Alright, and then we'll fill it out just like we did before. Press Asset Depreciation Summary. Let's say we're depreciating the home. Now these columns, Schedule E or Schedule E duplicate. If we're working with the first Schedule E, we'll just select Schedule E here. If we have more than one Schedule E duplicate, like if we were to have 9 or more properties, we'd have to tell which instance of a Schedule E duplicate that would go to. In this case, we're just on a Schedule E. Which property we're working on, property A, cost of the item, minus our land value. Depreciation class. And that chooses our recovery life and our convention. We'll press save. We can view the depreciation worksheet here on the left hand side for that home that we're depreciating, and we'll see that for this one here we see a current year depreciation of 4,530 and next year 4727. If we go back to the 4562, we'll see that we have down here on line 19I our current depreciation of 4530. Go back to the Schedule E, and that 4530 is here. The main thing I want you guys to take away from this is how we were able to link that 4562 to the Schedule E. I know that's very tricky in our software at times, and we're working on making it more user-friendly. Alright, so let's go on to the last schedule that we're going to cover today. Schedule D, 8949. Alright, the 8949 is a IRS form that they want you to put all of your statements for sales of stocks or whatnot, capital assets. Works a lot like the Schedule B, where we have the add statement button. Okay, for short term and long term. Short term here at the top, part 1, long term, part 2. You have to check one of these boxes, A, B, or C. For short term transaction, reported on 1099-B with the basis reported to the IRS or not reported to the IRS, or whether or not you can't check either one of those boxes. But we'll just go ahead and enter our information here on each one of these lines. If, let's say, for example, you have an employee who bought stocks from an employer based off, each paycheck, they took a certain amount out, and the date acquired is various, we can type a V in here and press enter, and that'll enter the various amounts for the date acquired. And same thing goes for long term down here at the bottom. If any of these stocks were inherited and the date acquired is various or inherited, we can type in I, and they'll type in inherited here in that case. Alright, so that does it for the Schedule D. It's a pretty simple return. If you guys need to get into any more complicated Schedule D questions, we can go over that another time, but we have our worksheets that go along with Schedule D here if you're doing more than just assets. But a few more things I want to cover before we get off here. The override feature, okay? I know a lot of you guys sometimes will find something incorrect in software where these calculated lines aren't calculating the right amount in your eyes. And we believe the program to be correct, so we don't recommend overrides often, but if in the case that you feel that override is necessary, you can right click and override. Now we don't recommend it often because it affects other lines in the return, of course. But if you know it's harmless, or you just want to go ahead and get that number through, you can right click and override. A lot of times, our technical support team will advise an override because it's the only way to get it to work the way you want it to work. So right click override will change a calculated entry to a manual entry. So that line that I can before not be able to type in, we can now type in any number we want. We know it's a manual. We know it's an overridden entry when there's a blue box with it's a blue line with a red box around it. So you can override it at any point too. It'll change it back to the original mount. Another feature I want to talk about today is this recalc button. This green button down here means the program's is normal, but if it's shown red, it's going to recalculate the entire return. So if it's green and I press it, it's going to turn red as it's going to start recalculating the whole program. So if you enter a mount in and you notice it doesn't change anything when it should, try pressing this recalc button down here and giving it a few seconds to let it recalculate, and some numbers may change. Alright, so let's say we feel like the return is complete. What we're going to do is we're going to do an auto error check now. Okay, the auto error check will bring up any red flags in the software in the returns. So if we look down here on the bottom, we're going to have a list of all the different red flags we have, and at the top it'll bring us to the form if we click on the message. So in this case, the very first one, dependent type, okay, there we go, popped up. It's letting us choose one now. A little glitch in the software, but it seems to be working. Ask a few questions here. We'll just say no to all these. Now once we clear out all our red fields, we can press reevaluate and it'll clear out them in the list below here. There we go, cleared out a bunch. There we go. Now all I'm doing is just going through and clearing out all these red fields just to finish up the return. They're just kind of things I skipped earlier that you guys probably already aware of. Alright, now that we have them all cleared out, and we have reviewed the 1040, and we feel like everything's complete, now it's time to create the e-file and print the return. Okay. To create the e-file, you're going to come under the auto error check, and there is a button that says MEF. What that does is it creates the return in MEF format and sends it to your Cloud EFC. If you press this button here and you log in your Cloud EFC, you'll see this return, and gives you the option to send it off to the IRS. And we're going to cover the e-file center in a webinar once tax season gets a little closer. Now to print the return, we have a few options. If you press this button here, print, this is going to preview to print the form that we're currently looking at. So if we're on the 1040 and press this button, press preview to print, it's going to open up the 1040 in PDF format to print. A cool feature I found today in the software, I know somebody has been asking about it. If we press here, it's going to open up a signature pad that you can actually insert signatures through the PDF mode here. It's that third button here. It says sign, add text, or send a document for signature. We can place a signature. And this is the signature pad built into PDF. So we can even draw a signature here and then place it anywhere in the tax return. Just a cool little feature I'm going to show you guys today. To print the form, we're just going to press the print button here. Press the print button here, and then we'll choose our printer and then press print. Now there's more than one way of printing also. If you guys want to print the entire return, we're going to hit this drop down, print preview of the entire return. Ask us to preview to print, which is going to create the PDF, versus send to file cabinet, which is going to send the PDF to a saved area on our desktop or on our computer, our hard drive. Now when you do preview to print return, it's going to print every form that you have on the left hand side in that forms tree. Now it can be a lot, so you guys normally don't want to do that. What you want to do, if you want to print off certain forms, you're going to come to print selected forms. This will bring up a list of all the forms in the return, and you can checkbox which ones you want. I know preparers have been asking about a print packet, whether it's taxpayer packet, tax preparer packet, federal packet, state packet. We don't have that built into the software yet. That's a feature we're looking to add. So if you guys are looking for that, we will have that soon. But in the meantime, you're going to have to choose which forms you want. So let's say we want the 1040 and all the schedules. And one last thing I'm going to cover today, which is new to the software. I hope it's in this update. Let's see. The client organizer. Okay. To add a client organizer for a return, we'll have to go into each individual return, press add form, type the letter C in, and the client organizer is the bottom form here. Now you'll type in the firm name, the address, and you type in any information here at the top. Let's see. I'll give you guys an example. And then below it we have statements to add. For example, let's say they had bank interest and dividend statement last year. You can remind them to bring that in again. 1099 IT. You have all the different statements for all the different forms that they're going to bring in, like medical and dental records. And down here at the bottom you can even enter in more notes. For example, if anything major changed, like dependent turned 17 whatnot, you can type in here. And then if we go to print preview, this is what the client organizer looks like. Alright, so that's going to wrap up tonight's webinar. We went over Schedule B, Schedule C's, Schedule D, and Schedule E, adding a statement on Schedule B with the interest and ordinary dividends, depreciation on Schedule C and a Schedule E, depreciating on multiple Schedule 4562s, which is really a big deal in the software. We went over the 89 and 49 on the Schedule D. We did your print previews, your auto error checks, your overrides, your recalcs. And again, I want to repeat that we didn't go over the Schedule A today. We are finishing up those forms